My now ex-boyfriend, current boyfriend during the story, who I'll just call Roger, and I tried to travel and take trips as much as possible. We loved exploring new places and getting away, even if it was for just a few days. And now with that said, we are pretty big introverts and like doing our own thing. When we hike or camp, we like to do so in secluded areas and not be in crowded camping sites or trails where you are literally shoulder to shoulder with other people. We decided to visit a new hiking trail that was decently steep that Roger heard about from a friend at work. We figured it would test our limits and be a nice little getaway for a few days. We have a huge tent and some other amenities to make ourselves comfortable, and I was actually pretty excited to get away. We got there and set up an impromptu campsite on a flat piece of ground where we would be sheltered from wind during the night. And we started this massive hike, and I was excited and nervous, but my excitement turned to annoyance when we stumbled upon another couple hiking at the same place that we were. I say that I was annoyed, but I really wasn't. Everyone has the right to public places as we did, as I am just very anxious and a very socially awkward person. The couple came up to us and introduced themselves, and we were polite and sparked up a little conversation. The couple was actually quite charming, and the questions they asked us and the information they shared with us had both Roger and I pretty disarmed. They asked if we wanted to continue the hike together, and since it's such a long trip, we agreed and figured that we could just turn around if we no longer want company. As I said, the couple is as sweet as can be. They're super informative about the area, and I found them very easy to talk to, even though I usually am terrible at keeping conversation with new people. We've been going for about 45 minutes, and I started falling a little behind. The guy that I'll refer to as Matthew, I won't be sharing the names that they actually gave us, falls behind me and starts up a conversation. And this is where things start to get a little creepy. He starts mentioning my physique and asks what type of workouts I do, stating that his partner is trying to tighten her buns and stay fit. He put his hand on my arm and hand and said, "Look at that definition. You must devote a lot of time to arm days." And I pulled back, kind of in shock and also wanting to get the hell out of there. Now, 5 minutes ago, I found him charming and endearing, and now I feel like his eyes are all over me and I'm getting some very creepy vibes. I catch up to Roger and try and whisper the gist of it to him, and he lets me know that the girl has also started being really weird and made a comment about his package and made sure to say that she wasn't talking about the backpack. Thoroughly creeped out at this point, we decide to just head back and thank them for their great conversation. Thankfully, they wanted to finish the hike and we could just get out of there and back to our campsite. After having a bite to eat, I realized both my bracelet and ring were gone. And I was racking my brain on how the hell I lost them. I never take them off, but it wasn't likely at all that they would just fall off. And then after 15 minutes of looking in my bags, I stopped dead in my tracks. I leaned over to Roger and said, "Matthew touched my arm and hand on the hike when he was complimenting my definition. Do you think he could have swiped it without me noticing?" And we weren't sure, and Roger told me that he would head back up in the morning and see if he saw anything on the ground. We went to bed early knowing that we were going to get up early and try to find the lost jewelry and head home. In the middle of the night, I awoke to the loud sound of a snapping branch and what felt like whispering or something. In that moment, I finally came to and shook Roger and woke him up and must have heard it as well. At that moment, he put a finger over his lips to tell me to keep quiet as he quietly unzipped the tent to take a look. The next thing I know, he's yelling, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" It was the couple from earlier. They said that they had stumbled across our area and wanted to wake up whoever was there because they saw a bear and were fearful that it might attack the site. Roger said that he appreciates that info, but that we're all set. And then Roger came back to the tent and put his finger over his mouth again. He kept his eyes directly on the window of the tent and didn't speak for about 5 minutes. He then looked at me and said, "Grab everything you can and get in the car." I went to speak, and he just repeated the same phrase. We got out and grabbed as much stuff as we could. He even grabbed the tent and began stuffing it still half together into the truck. And we just peeled off once we had the essentials and I finally got an answer out of him as to what was going on. He goes on to say that the Matthew, the guy from earlier, seemed to have a knife in his hand and another one holstered when he got out of that tent. And he said he didn't feel safe with us staying there and wanted to leave as soon as possible. Once we got home and began to shake that terrible nightmare from our minds, I decided to actually look up those couples' names on Facebook. Now, the only thing I could find was that those same two names were the names of the couple who died on a camping trip a few years prior. And no, this isn't some ghost story. There was a photo of the couple who had tragically passed, and they were not the two people that we saw. For what malicious reasons were they using these fake names, though? Was it just to steal people's stuff? Or something worse? I'm glad that we got up and left right away, or we may have found out what their true intentions were.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Having toiled without rest for an eternity, I realized I was on the brink of burnout and desperately needed a break from all the stress. I approached my manager, David Halter, and asked for a 4-day leave. Despite never taking a break in the last 2 years, I was hopeful that he would understand my situation and grant me the request. David was a middle-aged man in his late 50s. His response took me aback when I finally mustered the courage to approach him with my request. He approved my leave application and gave me a 7-day stay pass to the 12 Apostles Hotel and Spa, a luxurious resort above the Atlantic Ocean. The thought of being surrounded by the ocean's soothing sound and the coastline's picturesque view was exhilarating. I could feel the excitement building up inside me as I imagined myself lounging on the beach, sipping a refreshing cocktail and watching the sunset over the horizon. I was grateful for the opportunity to take a well-deserved break and recharge my batteries. I couldn't wait to pack my bags and embark on this much-needed vacation. When I arrived home, I contacted KLM customer service to book a round-trip flight from Bogota to Cape Town. On my return, I chose a Thursday to Sunday night flight and opted for business class on my outbound journey and premium economy. Despite the long flight, I was thrilled about the trip and decided to shop for all the necessary items beforehand. Finally, the day arrived, and I was ready to embark on my journey. Upon arrival in Cape Town, I spent the entire day in my hotel room, resting and preparing for the next day's tour. However, my peaceful slumber was abruptly cut short by a doorbell ringing in the middle of the night. I begrudgingly got out of bed to answer the door, only to be met by a member of the hotel staff holding a package. He claimed that it was for someone in the name of Bella Washer. I was shocked to hear my name, since I hadn't mentioned my trip to anyone and didn't know anyone in Cape Town. I tried explaining to the staff member that he had the wrong person, but he just nodded and left, leaving me uneasy and curious about the mysterious package. As I put the innocuous box on my bedside table, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. A nameless entity had sent it to me, and the thought of receiving something from someone I didn't know was enough to make my skin crawl. I sat next to it for 2 hours, trying to ignore it, but my curiosity eventually got the better of me. I mustered up the courage to open it, and inside I found a stunning bouquet and velvet card. However, when I looked at the card, I realized no writing was on it, a strange and alarming fact. I couldn't shake the feeling of being stalked by someone. The entire night was spent tossing and turning, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next day, I approached the receptionist and inquired about the mysterious gift sender, but they had no clue who it could be. The delivery guy had dropped it off and left without saying anything. I spent hours worrying about who could have sent the gift and why, but I eventually decided to let it go to enjoy my vacation. After my long day of exploring the city of Cape Town, I returned to my hotel room and felt the need to freshen up. I turned on the faucet and let the warm water cascade over my body, washing away the day's grime and exhaustion. Feeling rejuvenated, I went to sleep. The next day, I woke up early, got dressed, and set out for another adventure, taking in the sights and sounds of the city. However, as I walked down the vibrant streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I looked around, but saw no one suspicious, just a few people walking by. I wondered if I was being paranoid after that night's unsettling encounter. Nevertheless, I decided to keep my guard up and continued my tour. As the sun began to set, I found myself at a bar and decided to have some drinks. Walking in, I noticed 3 men following me and checking me out. I tried to ignore them and ordered 3 vodka shots, downing them all in one go. As I sipped on my drink, I couldn't help but feel like someone was watching me. Turning my head, I caught the gaze of one of the guys who had entered the bar with me. He was staring at me intently, and when he realized I'd noticed him, he flashed me a smile and started walking over to me. Despite his friendly demeanor, I politely declined his offer to join me. I was on this vacation to enjoy some time alone, away from male distractions. My past experiences had taught me that I needed to be cautious around men. A little while later, another guy approached me and asked me for a dance. Once again, I declined, preferring instead to focus on my drink. As the night wore on, I started to feel a little tipsy, so I decided to call it a night and head back to my hotel room. I don't remember much about how I got there, but when I woke up the following day, I was still wearing the dress I had on the previous night, and my head was pounding. I got up, feeling frustrated, but I was still ready to start the day. After a long shower, I got dressed and went to explore the local market area. My primary purpose for today was to shop, and I was excited to see what the market offered. While browsing through some beautiful jewelry pieces, I noticed the same group of guys from last night walking around the area. I couldn't help but feel suspicious of them, especially after the strange gift I received that night. Frustrated by the situation, I decided to head back to my hotel room, where I could relax and enjoy some of the hotel's amenities. However, as soon as I entered my room, I received a call from reception, informing me that another parcel was in my name. I was curious about the sender, but the receptionist knew nothing about it. After a few minutes, there was a knock on my door, and I found the parcel sitting on the floor. I scanned the area to see if anyone was watching me, but there was no one. I picked up the box and examined it. It was wrapped beautifully, and there was no indication of who sent it. I couldn't resist the urge to open it, and as I did, I found a blank note, a beautiful necklace, and a white rose inside. To my surprise, it was the same necklace I had admired in the jewelry store earlier. Feeling frustrated and confused, I returned to the store and investigated. I wanted to know who sent me the necklace and why. When I got to the jewelry store, they mentioned a blonde guy named Derry Pecker. They didn't want to disclose his details, but after I requested them for a while, they provided me with his contact details. I returned to the hotel room and sat on my bed while staring at my phone, wondering if I should call him. Finally, I pressed his number on the dial pad and put the cell phone to my ear. After the third ring, a guy with a husky voice picked up the call. I shuddered with horror as he spoke my name and said he knew who I was. and where I was calling from. To be continued.
The dark forests of Norway hold not just the stories of gods and giants fighting. There is a much scarier story that it holds. The ghost of the old Englishman with an axe who seemed to impose a wretched curse over people who dare to cross the forest. The people were not very kind to the man when he was living, and that is why the curse today was more haunting to them than they could have thought. And it seemed as if it was out for the blood of every villager that ever lived. And now, after 70 years, it is still out there, waiting to hunt down, but he doesn't know who to hunt. Alsuk was interrupted in the middle of the story, and people were bored of their mind. And then it was Privis's turn to tell a story, so he stood up and ignored and walked away. Then a bit later, he came back with a guitar and threw it in the fire. They all thought it was very weird, but then Privis continued in his uneven Scottish accent. To tell my story, I have to first sacrifice a material I love. This guitar is something that I love. The story that you're about to listen isn't just an ordinary story, and in case you wish to tell it forward, you must first sacrifice a material you love, or the consequences would be terrible. At first, people laughed off, and then Privis went on to tell the story. And as he was telling the story, there was a cold chill running over spine of people sitting, holding their legs, trying to warm themselves as the fire was slowly going out. The same story that Privis told was later on told by Alsuk, but in his arrogance, he denied the sacrifice, calling it an extra touch to spice up the story. A week later, Alsuk was found dead in the forest. Nobody knew why it happened or who did it, but everyone present there on the night of the first story was skeptical and suspected it to be a murder. Then one of the other friends decided to do the story without the sacrifice again, and then he was met with the same fate as Olsen. Nobody knew what happened and why it happened, but there was Privis that get on to the closest to all of it. He said it all started one time at the camp college, when he first time listened to the story and decided to tell the same story the next night. He did it without the sacrifice, and then, a few days later, he started seeing visions of beautiful women, and they would call her into the forests. Their beauty was too powerful to be ignored, and he went on to follow them. And then, when they would enter the forest, those beautiful women who looked like glowing butterflies would seduce the storyteller, and anyone who caved in would be killed. The only reason Privis survived was because they couldn't seduce him, since he was into men. Being gay saved Privis. So I decided to give the story a try, and that is why I am telling this next story without making a sacrifice of a personal item.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
What should I tell you about the forests of Mexico? Haunted by the most fearsome witches and apparitions, these forests are a living nightmare. And every time we want to go to the city, we have to pass along through these nightmares. So to safely go to the city, we mostly start our travel very early in the morning so as to reach the city before the dark nights hit, as the forest is a miserable place during the day itself. This particular evening, me and my abuelita decided to head out to the forest earlier than usual. It wasn't particularly night neither, it was morning, but the dangling time between that. And I picked up the bindle and we started our journey toward the city. And we talked a lot on the way to make the way look shorter. The city must have been 6 to 7 hours away, and yet we embarked on foot. Our ancestors might have been closely related to Terahumara runners. My abuelita was around 55 when this happened, so she was quite in shape to make such a strenuous journey. She was 72 when she made such the last journey, and the times haven't really improved since then too. I was 5 when we went on that journey through the dark forest, and good thing was that I was too oblivious to what had happened. I was on the epicenter of the scariest moment of my life, and had no idea of it until I was old enough to understand what had happened. So we started our journey, and we reached the first village exit in an hour. Abuelita was quite certain that we would make the journey on time. We were accompanied by the Villeros family for about an hour, and then up until the forest's eldest son of Elpo Jose Rodriguez was with us, to get some woods back at home. By 2:00 noon, we were in the forest and had enough time to spare for some rest and reached the city. We were even ahead of time. I decided to take a short route instead. Now that we were ahead of time, we decided to do that, and my abuelita, she said that she will not take the short route and instead will go as usual, and she told me to walk straight and don't mess up. Me being me, I decided to go for the short route. I soon found myself lost and confused as the two diverted routes looked very similar, and I could barely understand which way I needed to go in order to meet abuelita. I was pretty sure that she was probably worried sick about now, and then I kept walking, taking turns through the dark forest and looking for the right turn to take. And as I walked, I saw someone coming up close, and it was a woman. And before I could ask her, she came and asked me, "Have you seen my kids? They were 2 of them. They were last seen by the river." I was a bit suspicious, and I just shook my head and without words told her that I have not, and just kept walking. And as I walked away and went to distance, I could hear her wailing sounds from distance. And as I walked further, I saw one more figure approaching me. And as he came closer, I saw it was a man dressed in the U.S. Army attire, and it was Senor Blanco. And I looked at his fingers, and they were chopped off. So I just walked away, realizing that these are all the ghosts from the folklores that we heard as a kid. And it seemed as if the whole forest was filled with them as they started approaching me. I kept walking without turning back. It was getting dark, and it must have been at least 3 hours since I took the short route, and I was worried about abuelita more than I was for me. And I kept silently tearing up. And the biggest blunder I did was to stop and look behind me. As I looked behind, I saw all the apparitions were following me. I was more white than Senor Blanco, white of fear, as La Llorona kept wailing and approaching me, calling me her son. I slowly started walking away, and then picked up the pace to get the distance in. It was dark, and I was running blind with no sense of direction. I just decided to run up straight, scared, tearing, and calling out for abuelita. And soon, an hour later, I found a bush that I ran across. And soon there was light, and it was almost as if it was daytime. And then just ran past it and saw that abuelita was walking, and she looked back at me and said, "What use is a shortcut if it takes the same time?" I was confused and out of breath and seemed completely deranged. I've been running for more than 4 hours in that jungle. And as I got out, it turned out that all I was doing was running for mere 9 minutes. We did make it out of the forest in time. But things did change for me that day, for what I experienced was something paranormal. Later during her last days, my abuelita did confirm the haunting of the forests. This experience took place 4 years ago, after my time at the all-boys school, and I was back in Boston. I was 20 years old, and I was gearing up to go off to college in another state. Before I left, I made it a priority to spend as much time with my friends before our respective journeys into college life tripped us apart, and they always tend to. A friend of mine invited all of us high school friends to a bonfire in the Leominster, Massachusetts. For those of you who have never been to Leominster, it is basically the countryside of Massachusetts, where farming life and skiing resorts are plentiful. My friend, we will call him Chase, family owned a plot of land out there in the countryside that has been in his family since the early 1920s. I was excited to go because I used to live out there when I was very young, about 5 years old, and haven't been out there since then. A few other friends, we will call Kendrick, Sophie, Talia, and Kane, decided to carpool up there. Since Talia and her mom own a minivan that she scored for us to travel in for that weekend, about 15 minutes away from our location, Kane asked Talia to pull over in a liquor store to buy some drinks. Keep in mind, some of us were only 18 to 20 years old, but Kane just turned 21, so obviously we stayed in the car well. He went in to get the drinks. My excitement went up another level as up until this point. I never had alcohol before, and this will be the first time after Kane returned with drinks. Talia drove us the rest of the way to Chase's place. When we arrived there, it was just about sunset, and Chase was standing outside waiting for us with his arms extended, and that gesture of what took you so long to hit parked, and we poured out of the van. His cane showed up, chased the alcohol, and Chase's frustration quickly shifted to a smile, as if all things were forgiven. Chase ushered us to the back of the home, saying that we had already started barbecuing and food was practically done and getting cold. Later, as it was dark outside now, and my friends now were sitting around this bonfire, which was stacked with broken pieces of the family barn that was located a few yards from the actual house, with hay used as kindling, laughing and carrying on about high school memories. I was on my second beer at this point, drinking slowly as I didn't want to get drunk, as this was my first time drinking and I was afraid I'd pass out and miss the festivities. But I did have to pee. I announced I was going to take a leak. Chase reminded me to turn on the generator before heading in, so you can turn on the lights since this place lacked electricity for some reason. I assured him that I would as I stood up, but a sudden head rush overtook me. I was buzzes. I stumbled back. Kane laughed and called me a lightweight, and the rest of my friends laughed. I gave Kane the finger as I turned and started toward the house. Where it is I was in the middle of the bonfire in the house, I felt compelled to look over at the dark barn. I don't know why, but I did. And I studied it for a moment. And just as my eyes were completing its scan of the barn, my eyes instantly were fixed and my jaw dropped. His panic took over me. Through the orange glow of the bonfire, illuminated the barn partially. Standing in the doorway of the barn, there was something standing there, staring at my friends, like this person was just glaring at them. At first, I thought it was one of my friends over at the barn, just wanted to check it out. So I looked back at my friends to see which one of them guys was over there. But all 5 friends were standing around the fire having good time. My eyes widened at this point, and I looked back over at the barn. And just when I did, the person who was once glaring at my friends was now glaring dead at me. He noticed I spotted him. I stood still in panic and shock because there was an intruder on my friend's property, and I needed to inform the others so we can run and get to safety and phone the police. And I felt goosebumps radiating through my body as it did before a long time ago, forced me to remember the silhouetted man from my school 4 years ago. This prompted me to fully study this intruder in case I needed to give a description to the police later. But when I did, I noticed the man was standing there, but his lower half was faded due to the glow of the bonfire, and his solid state was visible in the shadows. It was then that I realized what I was seeing. I mentally tried to calm myself as I fixed my eyes on this ghost who had not broken his glare at me. I muscled up the courage somehow to glare right back at him. I was now locked in a stare down with this figure for what seemed like minutes, but it was more like a few seconds. Just then I heard Sophia, "Hey, did you pee yourself or something?" Her words pierced my ears as I heard my friends laughing and asking why I was just standing there, but my eyes never broke from this figure. Just then, I felt this sudden burst of anger take over me like a fiery wave. As I was flung into the inferno of a bonfire, I felt sweat beating down my cheeks as I glared at this ghost who was glaring back at me. Just then, the ghost sort of smirked at me, as if he was taunting me. This enraged me further, as I could hear footsteps approaching from behind me. It was Kendrick coming to check up on me. As I heard him say, "Dude, what's up?" Just as Kendrick asked that, I bolted. I charged towards the ghost as if we were about to go to war, and the ghost stood for a few seconds, never breaking his glare on me. I felt my heart beating against my chest as each step I took. I became hotter and hotter. I felt like I was a man on fire. As soon as I was a yard or two away from this ghost, he steps into the barn out of sight. "Get back here," I remembered shouting. I got to the barn doorway where the ghost stood and flung the door open and stood there expecting to see him waiting for me. But nothing. I was staring into pure darkness of the barn. I remember my heart beating hard against my chest. My sweat-drenched shirt clung to my body. Heavy breathing, ready to adrenaline coursing through my body as I was ready for a fight that would never come. The next thing I knew, Kendrick, Kane, and Chase ran up to me and grabbed my arm, knocking me out of my daze. My body instantly felt normal, so I no longer felt like I was on fire. Completely confused, I didn't know what came over me. I never felt such anger before, as I am known for my buds as being a very chill guy, but I was truly ready to rip this ghost guy's head off of his body, or lack thereof. My friends figured out that I must have been drunk or high or something to rationalize why I acted like that. They began escorting me back towards our bonfire, where Sophia and Talia was sitting looking at me with concerned eyes. Still trying to rationalize what I've just done as my friends guided me away, I turned my head to look at the barn's door, which was still wide open once more. And I kid you not, deep into the dark barn, I saw him. More specifically, I saw his floating head as his eyes were staring straight at me with a devilish grin. Nobody, just his head. I turned in face front wards as we neared the bonfire, and my friends began to calm me down. Sophie spoke up and asked what happened. I remembered saying nothing, as I didn't want to appear crazier than I just made myself out to be. I had to go take a leak, but I figured that I would just hold it until we went back inside together to prevent myself from acting out like that again. We did eventually return back into the house. I took my leak and ended up passing out on the couch. As far-fetched as the story might sound, trust me, I know it does, but it really happened to me. The fact that I was ready to go to blows with a spirit, absolutely insane. Kane eventually confessed to me a few months ago. Yeah, we do keep in touch that I must have taken his LSD blended drink as we were drinking the same brand of bottled beer, and we were just putting it down randomly and picking up on what we thought was our own beer. We knew that must have been the case, because he didn't feel like the effects of the drink that entire night. But when he saw me act like that, he figured that was the reason why. I honestly don't know if I was drunk or tripping off my friend's LSD, but I truly felt that there was a ghost in that barn taunting me. Angry that Chase took pieces of his barn to burn in our bonfire. That was his way of getting back at us. That was my assumption, of course. I have a few more encounters that I would like to share in time, but this one still gets to me.